Welcome, everybody, to the Power Forward Pod, hosted by the Power Forward Group Financial Advisory Team, where we believe two is better than one, dialogues are better than monologues, thoughts were meant to be challenged, and sound boxes are the enemy. So today I'm joined by Bobby Castellander, our Power Forward Group advisor on my left.
How's it going?
Excellent. We got Jersey in the house today, right? With double Jersey.
That's right.
We got Drew Jacobs on my right. Drew's an attorney. He's going to tell us a little bit about his practice today and share a little bit about his story. And as I hope everybody's been listening in to all our podcasts previously, Power Forward Group is a financial planning and wealth management team working across the country through Zoom, located at 2 Park Avenue in New York, with clients everywhere. So we want to add some value, talk a little bit about finance, talk a little bit about growing our own businesses, and add some value to all of you today. So, Bobby, you know Drew for quite a while, right? You want to give Drew a little bit of an intro?
Yeah, a couple years now. Drew, what's going on? How you feeling?
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited to be here. This is great.
Great,
Jersey's
awesome.
In the house
we're happy to have you on.
Jersey's a big state, though. Where are you guys from in Jersey before we jump in?
So I'm from Verona, New Jersey, North Jersey. Drew, Mendham, right?
Pretty close, Mendham. Yeah. Very small town next to Morristown, so not too far from the city. Pretty good.
Absolutely. So Drew and I think we met during COVID. I think it was like 2020. We met through a mutual friend through basketball, and since then, the last 4 or 5 years, we've been on the same team a couple times. Won a couple Hoboken League championships.
That's right.
We've grown as friends over the last couple years, and it's been great. So
absolutely,
excited to have you on today.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah.
So want to start off by just giving a quick introduction to Drew, kind of give his background, and then we'll kind of jump into it today. So Drew Jacobs is the founder, managing attorney of Jacobs Counsel LLC, an estate planning firm focused on helping athletes, entrepreneurs, and really growing businesses. His practice focuses primarily on business, contract law, estate planning, probate issues. Also serves as outside general counsel to several high-growth startup businesses. Also represents a couple professional athletes as their contract agent and helping athletes secure opportunities through NIL earnings and things of that nature. Like you said, right, native New Jerseyan, so from Mendham, New Jersey. Drew was a hell of a basketball player in high school, 1,000-point scorer, won a state championship, and continued his career on after that. I think he went on to play at Boston College for a few years. Had a terrific career there as well, and that's where I think he really grew. His passion grew for sports law. Following BC, I think he then went on to, correct me if I'm wrong, Seton Hall University Law School?
Yeah, Seton Hall Law.
Yeah, awesome. How was your time there? Good?
Loved it, yeah. I graduated in 2021, so it was a formative couple of years, and, parlaying, going to Boston College was a great school, and Seton Hall is a great school as well. Excellent.
And then I know following law school, I think you started and founded your first company, right? Head and Heart Hoops LLC, which was a basketball training business in Northern Jersey, where I think you ended up coaching and training a number of D1 athletes and professional basketball players as well.
Yeah, and it's kind of a key theme that I'll talk about today. Is just I've always tried to be entrepreneurial in what I do, using sports and using my schooling to really help add value to others. So I trained a lot of players in Head and Heart Hoops, and kind of that's dovetailed into my current pursuits now with Jacobs Counsel. So
awesome, good stuff. And I know since then as well, right? I know you've been over the years you've helped out a lot of law students at Seton Hall Law. I think you've spoken to them a couple times, and just continuing to help younger students in the field, right?
Yeah, and I'll use this as I'll kind of give like just a general background too. I appreciate Bob. That was really well said. When I had the opportunity to go to Boston College for school and ended up walking onto the basketball team, which was an awesome experience. I literally called the coaches and said, "Hey, do you guys have tryouts as a freshman?" And fortunately, I don't think I played as well to justify being on the team during the tryouts, but I was fortunate enough to be able to be on the team. They said the day before practice started, they said, "Hey, Drew, you can come to practice tomorrow."
Can we stop there? Can we stop there for a minute?
Sure.
How does this work? Is there college teams like BC also have an open tryout? How does that work?
There was no open tryout. A lot of times, being a walk-on is it's different for every school. I was fortunate to go to BC and play for Steve Donahue, who had come from the Ivy League. He just got he had made the Sweet 16 with Cornell. I don't know if you remember that. They played John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins in the Sweet 16 with Kentucky, and they had a great year that year. And Steve Donahue's an awesome guy. He really used walk-ons in practice. We felt like we were actually a part of that group, which is important when you have a team, right, to have everyone feel like they're part of a team. I literally just called him. I didn't know him. We didn't know. I didn't have any connection up there or anything. And, he let me show up to some of their workouts.
Love the
and stuff.
initiative. That's
and
great.
And the funny thing is, when I first got up there, we were working out, doing one-on-one stuff, and I didn't know who any of the players were. So I saw this guy, and he looked pretty good, and I said, I'm gonna guard him. And ended up being an NBA draft pick, second rounder, Olivia Hanlon, who's a hell of a player. And I just picked him up full court. I got burned a couple times, but I think they kind of liked that. They're like, "Who is this guy? Coming in this highly talented
I mean,
freshman."
all-state point guard, 1,000-point scorer. You're certainly no slouch. That's not an easy thing to do.
I think it's also just like, hey, sometimes like it may be a daunting task to do something. That's kind of how I view life. Is like sometimes it may look pretty bleak, or it may not make a whole lot of sense. And you guys could probably see it too when you're starting and doing a lot of things for people. It's like, but it's worth a shot, right? And it's sometimes being fearless. Sometimes it even helps to not even know what you're doing when you go into it, and to be fearless like that, because sometimes you can get held back by that fear if you kind of like go in and you're overthinking things. So that was a huge thing for me to be able to go and do that. And I guess it worked out pretty well for me, going up there and having a great experience at BC. So
we have a ton of crossovers in terms of just where Power 4 group comes from, and I think where Jacobs Law comes from. The beginning of Power 4 group really comes from my background. I practiced as an estate planning attorney for a little while at a law school. And then we crossed over, and most of our clients are corporate attorneys. We do work with some athletes as well, which is always quite interesting, which keeps it fun, right? You want to have clients of different spectrums, because otherwise we get bored. And we want to add value to everybody. But why law school?
It's a great question. I had a really unique experience in high school being around professional athletes. Mendham, New Jersey is not traditionally a hotbed for professional athletics at all. But one of my mentors, who I actually now practice with, he was actually training a lot of prospective professional athletes in my town at this little gym we called The Barn. And so I was going up there as a junior in high school. I played center until my sophomore year of high school. So
what do you play now?
I shoot only
He's a
threes
point
now.
guard.
Yeah, I'm a point guard now.
Drew's a hell of a shooter.
I went from the story I always tell, working with my friend Marcus, who's one of my closest friends now, mentor. I went from 2 3-pointers my sophomore year of high school. We won the state championship as a guard. I played the full game, had 2 threes the whole season. I set the school record for threes in a season in 2 years, 75. Just through working with him, it shows the power of, like, for me, it taught me a valuable lesson of you can really do anything if you just really work hard and you know what you're working on and you really focus on that. In 2 years, I completely transformed my game, had the opportunity to go play in college. So that was kind of like...
you could do anything, but me, I could go to law school. But,
there may be some limits, some athletic limits.
How tall are you?
I'm only 6'1", but, I guess
what's your height?
the job done.
Like 6'2",
I can't
6'3".
take,
Yeah.
I can't take
5'7".
Bobby in the post. But yeah, that was kind of where I started, having that, being up close and personal, and then going to college, being close to athletes. It really just showed me that, like, listen, like, there's multiple ways to help, and that was, I always have the orientation, and I'm sure you guys do too, and I know that you guys do too, of it's always about how can you add value, how can you help? And that was really, like, for me, it was like, oh, okay, there's actually an opportunity now. I never really got to see it in high school, being from Mendham, not many professional athletes coming out of there, but then these experiences were kind of leading me down that path, and that drove me back to law school. Marcus and I had discussed a kind of a plan to take it from the training components, the on-the-court components, to the off-the-court components of, hey, there's a real opportunity to represent these players. So Marcus went back to law school. I went back to law school at the same time, and I was helping him throughout the process while I was in law school of just working with these guys.
So you went to law school kind of knowing what you want to do. You wanted to come out as an agent? Is that what was that the original goal?
Yeah, that was the goal. Obviously having a legal degree is extremely, valuable at any point. But the agency route was the reason I went to law school in the first place. And being able to, use that to,
Well, that alone puts you heads and heels above, I think, a lot of the attorneys we work with, and myself.
Absolutely.
I went to law school because I didn't know what to do with myself.
Right.
I took a good LSAT, and I was like, all right, I'll go to law school. I had no concept, which to me related to why I kind of probably transitioned out of law pretty quickly. But you almost went the other way. You went to law school partly to represent players, and then I think you built out more of a kind of full-fledged practice off of that, which is super cool.
Yeah. That's a great point. Kind of the opposite, right? Where it's like, the more I was around the legal field, the more I kind of understood that there was a need for principled transactional legal advice for a lot of the people that I was around. And, now and this is kind of like one of the really, the things that's really driven my practice is just the amount in 2024, in the last couple of years, of the amount of technology available to connect and learn information fast, connect with other attorneys that don't want to, necessarily, that need help, right? That I can collaborate with and learn myself. Because again, when you go to law school, I'm sure you remember, Reuben, it's like you get out of there and you're like, you take the bar exam, you pass, you forget all the info, and you're like, what now?
Yeah, that's part of it. The other part of it is I don't think you learn, from my experience, and I'm sure yours was similar, you don't learn anything in law school that's going to translate necessarily to your day-to-day practice, right? Even the bar itself.
Right.
That's just another test you're going to take. What's that movie, Leonardo DiCaprio? What's that? Catch Me If You Can? Right? Everybody's shocked the guy took the bar, but the truth is you don't need 3 years of law school to take the bar. You need Barbary to take the bar.
Yep.
So in terms of building out your skill set and saying, all right, now I'm going to come out of law school and run a practice, how did you do that?
Yeah, I was always in law school, and I was given good advice was, I've always was interested in sports, but I didn't focus on sports law per se in law school. I was focused on some skill that was going to be able to enable me to add value, and tax was actually that skill. I took about every tax class known to man at Seton Hall, and I had a business background being just in the business school at Boston College, and that tax background parlayed a little bit into estate planning, which obviously has a lot of crossover with some tax components, and then just having a business background, setting up businesses for people, that was kind of I was always interested in that, and that ended up, and now that's pretty much a key focus of my firm is using those tenets to really help people out.
Yeah, I think, Bobby, from our perspective, every time we talk to a client, no matter what walk of life, I think the first question comes up is, how can you help me pay
less taxes,
right?
I mean, that's a common theme across every client we speak with. Yeah.
Exactly. You hear from athletes, you hear from big law attorneys. It's harder for some than others, but I think that tax background really just hits everywhere. I mean, what do we see on the tax side?
What do we see?
Yeah, in terms of our clientele, like what are they looking for on the tax side?
Just ways to help mitigate taxes as much as you can. I mean, there aren't many people out there that fully love giving their money. I mean, we have spoken to a few. There are people out there that love paying taxes, but for the most part, I think most people want to try and find legal ways to mitigate and alleviate their bill as much as possible, so they have more for their future, themselves, and their families.
Right. I like the way you said legal ways, right? Tax deferral is a good plan.
Well,
tax avoidance is a problem.
I read an interesting quote, and it said the tax code is the greatest game ever invented because it's about 10 to 20 pages of what you owe and thousands of how to pay less if you structure your operations accordingly. So that type of work is really valuable for any client. I have athlete clients, but also just business owner clients, anyone that's looking to use knowledge to help them legally structure their affairs in the most efficient way possible. And I think that's really important, is just to have trusted advisors like yourselves to be able to guide along that process.
Yeah. I think what I'm really interested in learning more about is, so you come out of law school, you're going to create your own practice of some sort. The goal was originally to work with athletes and maybe represent athletes. Got this amazing tax background, which I think cuts through all fields. And then from there, it's how do you build that book of business? And then you say you have such an eclectic practice. How do you then speak to different clients of different types? I'm really,
Yeah, great question, and it's fascinating. One of the opportunities, I'm someone that I believe you can create opportunities out of thin air if you have that type of mindset with you. And one of the things, it's actually a funny story. When I I did my first year of law school at the University of Miami. I transferred back to Seton Hall.
That's crazy, right there.
Miami is an amazing place.
Yeah,
right?
what are you doing?
I did well. Everyone's like, did you flunk out? No, I did really well. I knew I was going to live in the city. Some of my mentors were saying, get back home, and I listened to them. And so it was funny. I transferred the fall of 2019. COVID hits my spring break of 2020. So I'm in Seton Hall. Like, I like to talk. I mean, I'm sure you could probably, I like to, network and make friends, but it's tough. You're only there for one semester. So long story short, in the fall, I was able to make one of the journals, and being in law school, I'm sure the people that are watching.
Which journal?
It was the Legislative Journal. Seton Hall is two, the Law Review and the Legislative Journal.
Do you know about journals, Bobby?
I don't. No.
Yeah. It's
you want to tell Bobby a little about journals?
Ruben, you can fill him in about the importance of the journals.
Yeah, journals kind of suck. You're in law school, and it's all about building your resume, because it's all about where you graduate in class, what your GPA is, and one of the ways to build your resume is what journal you can get on. So you finish your 1L year, which is I think easily the hardest year of law school and probably the most important year.
Yep.
And then you hit the summer and you think, I'm good. But it turns out not. You have to write what's called a note.
Yep.
You wanted to find a note?
Oh, it's a hazing ritual that they put law students through. And effectively, they give you a legal issue and you analyze a particular side and you write a rather large research paper, for lack of a better word, on it.
And the torture of all this is you have a time limit. Some finals are like this as well, but you have a time limit on it. So maybe you have 48 hours to write a 4-page note, let's say, right? Now, your brain starts to think, wait, what if I finish this in 12 hours? Is the other guy taking the full 48? Can I make this better? I only have 4 pages. Like, how do I get this perfect? And then other students who are already on these journals, so now you're getting, there's probably some good politics you could have played, but you don't know because you're a 1L, are going to review your note. And they're going to decide what journal you get on. Now, the top journal is the law review, right? Law review, usually. That means a lot to prospective hirers or firms. And it goes down from there, but you definitely want to get on a journal there's different classifications on.
And law students, myself included, are typically neurotic. So you're always thinking about what is everyone else writing? Am I writing enough? And is the time limit being hit? But yeah, so I was lucky. I wrote a note. It was like the last week of July or something. The last thing I wanted to do was be writing this note, but I wrote it and they let me on. And the first, every year, each journal at Seton Hall, probably everywhere, holds a symposium where they bring back academics and practitioners and to talk about a legal issue. And my second year of law school, I had to sit through the most boring symposium. No offense if someone's listening, and it was child privacy in the law. Now, it actually ends up, it's fascinating now, but when I was a student, I wasn't trying to listen to that. So fast forward to my third year, we're in COVID, everything's virtual. And I told the girl who I'm very good friends with, who's the leader of the legislative journal, she was the president, I said, let me be symposium editor, and I'll make the best symposium you've ever heard, but it will not be child privacy in the law. So she selected me. I said, we're going to do sports law. And I created a symposium, it took a lot of work, but it was really, really awesome experience. It was all virtual. It was a virtual symposium, and it was on the future of sports law. So I brought back Governor Christie to talk about sports betting. Yeah. He was my Little League baseball coach, by the way. So I had a little bit. We could get his name back, and he's a great guy. And we got back a couple of the commissioners of some of the Pat Hobbs, who's the athletic director at Rutgers, Val Ackerman, the commissioner of the Big East. We had some really, really great names, and like 150 participants online. The administration loved it. Seton Hall's a big gaming law, because
which is a super growing area.
100%, and it's an area that I've done some work in too. New Jersey was one of the first states to really go live with after the PASPA was repealed in 2018, which was why Governor Christie talked. He was kind of the guy to challenge.
They brought William Hill in and all that.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. And so I went to Dean Buzang, who I'm friends with, and I said, hey, listen, Dean, we have a ton of students that are interested in this area. And this was my third year law school back in February 2020. I said, I think Seton Hall needs to really have a defined program, devote resources towards sports, entertainment, gaming. Miami Law has an unbelievable program with Greg Levy down there. I have tons of friends. They're amazing. They do a great job. Greg is an awesome guy. He brings back A-Rod and, all these guys. So I said, Dean Buzang, I think we're missing an opportunity. And she said, why don't you come back and start it? So I had the opportunity right after. She called me out of the blue in August, and she said, after I graduated taking the bar, and she was like, why don't you come back and do it? So I was up at Seton Hall for a year. I knew I wasn't going to, didn't want to do it full time, but it was a great, we kind of spearheaded that program, and they've actually established, I don't know what they call it. I think it's gaming, hospitality, entertainment, and sports. So students now, I don't know if they have a full concentration yet, but they can take defined curriculum. They've hired a full-time dean, so it was awesome. That was a really cool thing for me. It was cool for me to see, hey, listen, this was something that I had seen in Miami, worked really well in Miami. We're out right outside New York City. This is the mecca, the sports hub. So that was one of the ways that I was able to kind of use that entrepreneurship in order to I felt like I made a good impact and was able, while I was there, to help a lot of students that were thinking about, one student, she's working at the NHL now. I still talk to her. She's great. I have a lot of friends that, I met when they were third years.
So I imagine that helped you build out your practice, right?
Yeah.
It helped you get that jump start.
Exactly.
Did Bucknell do anything like that for you?
They did not, no, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, we didn't hype Bobby up enough. Bobby was a heck of a football player at Bucknell. I don't know if the audience knows this, and he's actually one of the MVPs of the Hoboken basketball league that we play in now. So he's not someone that not someone that I would ever want to guard in a basketball game. Did Bucknell do that? Did Bucknell have any programs like that?
No, not that I know of.
Yeah.
No. I mean, that was all pre-NIL stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, so, I mean, I think in terms of like how that helped build my practice, that was an interesting way of just, and then I kind of saw like throughout that process was, hey, if I have the opportunity to think differently about problems and use a lot of the, I was able to run a virtual symposium. I didn't have to get these guys to fly into New York. I could, we could do virtual conferences. We did another virtual conference that next year. We had Demora Smith, the executive director of NFLPA. Like I said, why don't I look at law firms through that same lens, right? Where it's like a lot of solo law firms, small law firms, really smart attorneys. I mean, I work with a lot of attorneys. I have, attorney mentors that I lean on. They give me some work. We, kind of share work as like an outsourced associate. But I said, there's got to be a way to do this, to use technology to really be on the cutting edge of, hey, meeting clients. I mean, I'm sure you guys do this too, meeting clients where they're at, being able to, obviously we're jurisdictionally limited, right? But being able to, virtually meet and so on and so forth. And that kind of spearheaded the business and transactional estate planning practice that I've been building, coming off the heels of that. So, it was interesting.
So I think to your point, I'm sure Bucknell, I went to Fordham Law, I'm sure they would have offered those opportunities if you pushed. But I think that idea of really saying, all right, let's think outside the box. You brought something to the school, right? I'm sure they paid for a lot of that, but you brought that to the school. Yeah,
and pushing, and I've always just tried to. I don't know whether it's right or wrong. It's just a way that I've always thought is like, the way that things are done traditionally works great for a lot of people. It just didn't really work for me. I kind of, my person, whatever it was, I kind of knew that, I wanted to do something a little bit outside the box and see if I was able to make it work. And obviously it takes a little bit of time to get these things going. And, there's the period where you're like, is it going to work? Yeah. But, it ends up, over time, if you stick with it, it can be really good.
Yeah. I think it's the idea of adding value, right? When you think about your practice now, and we think about our practice now, people ask us all the time, like, what got you to where you got? How did you grow? And I think it's, you add value to each individual you sit in front of, each business you work with. A, that gets around. B, that's all people are looking for, right? It's quite simple. And you make sure you can add value in whatever your core competencies are, but that's it. That's it. Everything else works off there. So you build your own business right there, right off that.
Yeah, and I'm sure for you guys too, it's one of those things where I'm sure you guys do a lot of things for your clients that don't show up in the job description, right? And I think that's part of adding value too, is going above and beyond and doing what's necessary to get things done for people that you care about, and the clients can see that.
Yeah,
that's what it's about. Yeah, helping people. I think that's really what it comes down to. And I think all of us here at this table really enjoy what we do, and that's how we're providing value to our clients, right? Just comes down to helping people in any way we can.
We're the super helpers of the world.
There we go.
I think Trump would use a comment like that, right?
We're
the best helpers.
You got a Trump impression for us coming up? Or what?
Anybody got one?
I know.
But yeah, I think that growth in a practice is step A, and then step 2 is how do you meet each person on the level they want to be met on, right? So from our perspective, when we sit with clients, we have almost different silos, right? We work with around 800 big law attorney families across the country, which are very different kind of than the background and the career steps you took in terms of just wanting to have that corporate American job, have that straightforward path. And we have some athletes we work with, and then some family businesses and some corporate businesses. And each avenue is looking for a different value, but also just discussing the goals, right? The goals are going to be so different. So I'm curious where you see the difference between, all right, you're speaking to an athlete about an estate plan. How does that conversation look versus, mom, dad, and 2 kids?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I have I market mostly to athletes and entrepreneurs, but I represent in estate planning a pretty decent amount of retirees and people that are have older kids, and everyone. Estate planning, and Reuben, it's a highly personal endeavor, right? An athlete's going to need something different than a retired couple that's looking to protect their assets for their kids. And so for me, it's really about, you really have to take the time to sit down and figure out what everyone is trying to do. It's the same thing. It's the same thing about going corporate law versus going entrepreneur law, let's say, right? Is your goals are different. Where and I always ask, kids call me all the time and say, or students call me all the time and they say, how do you break into the sports industry? Well, what do you want to be? Right. And you have to I think it's a process of figuring out, for me, it's what don't you want to be, right? It's looking 10 years down the line and you say it's not so much, or maybe it's not so much who you want to be, but it's who are you going to become in the process of achieving that goal. And I think there's a lot of crossover with estate planning there too, where it's just you have to sit down and figure out someone could want a crazy irrevocable trust with, they're on they have a complex, needs from a financial perspective. But, some people just want a simple, basic will. They don't want any frills, and you have to service those people the same way. So I think it's one of those, it's one of those things where it's really different for everyone, but it's also, you have to think about it a little bit. I've thought a lot about, like, all right, maybe not who do I want to be in 10 years, but like, what goal do I want to set for myself? Because I believe if you set a goal, you're going to obtain experiences and obtain clients that are going to help you become the person that it takes to reach that goal, right? So it's kind of like an interesting way to think of it, but it's the way that I think of it, and it served me pretty well, throughout the career, because it's never going to be easy, right? There's always going to be challenges, ups and downs, and I'm sure you guys have seen it as you built the practice, Ruben.
I think it starts with all like the type of questions you ask and standing in that individual's shoes. When we talk to corporate attorneys often, the question begins, when do you want to retire, and what does that look like? My favorite question is, if you walked out your door tomorrow, close the lights, walked out the door of your office tomorrow, close the lights, what would you be doing?
Yep.
Like, what are you up to? I'm not a corporate attorney. A lot of our clients are corporate attorneys. I shared with Bobby recently that my father-in-law, over the summer, is sitting next to me by his pool. He turned around to me and he said to me, you should start thinking about what your retirement looks like. He had just started to settle into his retirement.
Yep.
And it hit me. I asked that question. How many times do we ask that question a day?
At least, I don't know, 10 times a day, maybe, I'd say. Yeah,
Right.
Anywhere from like 8 to 10 at least.
I don't think I've ever thought about retirement, and I'm not sure if I will,
Right.
because I'm not necessarily that. I'm a business owner, right? What's your favorite question in terms of like when you think about putting yourself in a client's shoes?
What's my favorite question that
Yeah,
we
to like really
that we ask?
Yeah.
I'd say the retirement question, right? When you want to retire, what does that look like for you? And I think the most common response we get is nobody's ever fully retiring, right? Everybody wants to be doing something afterwards, right? You got to keep your mind busy, whether it's, continuing to go on to maybe teach, or, I feel like we get that answer a lot from a lot of our attorneys.
Bob, I'd be interested to hear too, like from a corporate attorney, you guys work with corporate attorneys. I'm sure, 800 clients, you got a lot of corporate clients. What is the most common answer to that? Is there like kind of one answer that stands
I think the
out?
common answer is I'd like to retire tomorrow.
Yeah,
that's
sure.
gotta-
Well, it's
that's
a
gotta be the-
stressful.
yeah.
I mean, I have a ton of friends that do it, and it is a grind. I mean,
Yeah.
but it's it's rewarding because
Right.
you're at the cream of the crop. When you're working at a big law firm, and I'm sure you have a lot of clients in New York City. That is white glove service where you are really making a difference on massive transactions, right? And so that makes sense. I mean, it's a stressful. The law is a stressful job. It's not for it's not for everyone, and that's an interesting. I was curious to hear what people what their answers were to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we hear that a lot. I think it runs the gamut, which is what I find so interesting about working with people, right? You work with people, everybody comes from a different place. They have a different money story. They have a different belief system. And it's not my job to set that at all. If anything, if I think and put myself in their spot and try to set that, then I'm doing them a disservice. It's my job to understand that and then try to get them to where their goals are. And I'm sure that's what you're doing day in, day out. So in terms of just when I think about, we get asked all the time by corporate attorneys about wills and trusts. And we get asked, hey, it's on our questionnaire. Do you have a will and trust? Do you have an estate plan in place? When is the time to think about that? And what does the ideal setup look like for just, let's keep it simple. Let's say, hey, a fourth, fifth year making, how much is a fourth year making?
I don't know, 300,000?
Yeah.
Maybe a little more.
$300,000, right?
Bonuses, yeah.
One child, like what does that look like? What do they need? But first, I'm setting that. I shouldn't even be saying that. When's the right time to start thinking about that? And then what does that ideal plan look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's always a good idea to think about it, right? Because you read a stat, 67% of Americans don't have an estate plan. Most of the people don't even really, and it's not their fault. It's confusing. If you're not immersed in it like I am, or if you're in the financial world, like, would you really know how a trust and a will work together and, what you should have over the other? So I think it's always a good idea to think about that. I think certainly when you get married and have a kid, I think that's when it becomes really critically important to start setting things like that up. And that's who I market to is, I say athletes and entrepreneurs, but it's really a high-performing individual, a lot of, younger families that are looking to set this stuff up. And it's really about making sure that your family is protected in the event that something goes catastrophically wrong. it's a rather low likelihood of that, but you need to make sure that you have the appropriate documents set up so that if something goes wrong, you know that you can have faith that your family is going to be protected. And then as you get older, I mean, we talked about priorities earlier. You start to prioritize protecting your assets, thinking about the estate tax, and there's a lot of different considerations. But I think for a corporate attorney that has one kid and is married, or maybe even not married, just making sure that you have the basic baseline will, power of attorney.
Have you sat down with Drew yet? Bobby just got married this
I have
summer.
not.
Are we ready?
Yet.
Let's go.
That's on the
Yeah,
to-do
we're
list.
ready.
Yeah, we just got married September. All right, let's.
Bobby's getting thrown on the email list too.
We'll speak soon though.
Yeah,
for
sure. I mean,
Drew.
it really is. And I pretty much everyone I talk to doesn't really have this set up, and that's the number one thing for me as a business owner. Right? Is my service is estate planning.
Yeah.
Estate planning is not, and I'm sure you guys have clients that you talk to, they say, it's our, we'll do that at some point, right? Where it's like, it's not, people buy things when they're over the threshold of the pain threshold of not having it, right? Or whatever however they view their purchasing. Estate planning is like, it's a protection thing, right? So it's kind of sometimes becomes secondary to potential clients, and it's a hard sell sometimes.
It's also secondary to us oftentimes. We just had a conversation with clients that it sucked, to be quite frank. I mean, we put together a financial plan. We've been working with them for a couple of years. And then we got a reach out, and the reach out was a health event that one of the clients had. And we thought through it, and did we talk about disability insurance? Yes. Did we force disability insurance? Did we push it hard?
Right.
Was it something they were thinking about? No. Was it our responsibility to bring up to them? It was. And now they had an event. That's what really hurts, right? Does it hurt if somebody got 26% in the market when it ripped last year versus 22%?
Right.
All right, sure, nobody's happy. But, man, everybody's thinking about that, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's thinking about that safety net. Nobody's thinking about that life insurance plan or that disability policy ever. But that's the stuff that keeps me up at night. I mean, that's the stuff that bothers us, right?
Yeah, I agree, and those are things that happen, unfortunately, and we're seeing it. We've seen it unfortunately, we've seen it a couple times in our careers thus far. I know you and I can both speak to that. But that's the importance of planning, right? You got to make sure these things are covered. God forbid, there is a life-changing, altering event that happens. You want to make sure you're fully prepared for it.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Like, it doesn't have the sizzle, right? It's the same thing with the athlete clients we work with, right? Yeah, do they make more in a short span than a lot of our corporate attorney clients? Oh my God, right?
Yep.
What is an NBA? What's a minimum NBA contract today?
It's around $700,000
Right?
for a rookie. Yeah.
At a minimum, right? What's a first round pick making out of the draft? And then max contracts are how many players?
Yeah.
Sponsorships, all that stuff.
And how many players
right?
are destitute now, right? How many players?
Yeah.
Because they didn't put, the basic pieces that need to be put in place aren't put in place. Nobody wants to talk about that. Man, I hear about real estate deals every time I speak to a player because that's got sizzle.
Yep.
You can see it. It looks cool. Are you prepared to own that? Are you prepared to manage that?
Yeah.
It's a different conversation. So it's that baseline. I think it's hard for us. It's hard for the client to always think about the baseline piece. But I think that's why I love that you start with estate planning, yet you're working with athletes.
And that's one of the reasons I went into estate planning too, is just because the market is theoretically huge for people that need it because it's sensible, right? So it's one of those things like, depending on where you live in New Jersey, if you have a will, power of attorney, and healthcare power of attorney, that's a pretty comprehensive baseline plan for the average person. But that's just that's probably the baseline of what you need. You can get into revocable living trusts, irrevocable trusts, different charitable giving strategies. Like, it's a really creative, depending on where you're at on the spectrum, whether you're just starting out or whether you're mature, there's so many different things that you can do. And the technology is such that, the access of, that I have to being able to draft these different plans is massive. So it's an exciting thing because everyone's different. You don't feel like you're sitting behind, and you feel like you're adding value. You're working with people. You're getting to know them on a personal level, which is what I really like, and that's why I like estate planning and in particular. But
I think about that all the time in terms of growing in practice. Any room I sit in, right, the service that we provide is a service business. Anybody in the room needs the value that we're able to provide, that you're able to provide, right? Everybody is a potential client. The question is, are they the right client for you? Can you meet them at the right place? But you're sitting there and everybody's out there, right? We're not selling a tool. I'm not selling an an iPhone's a bad example. 'Cause apparently, until recently, everybody was an iPhone client, and now
We just got you on it recently too.
they got me on the spectrum.
Recently, Ruben was a Droid guy for a while.
Right?
Gosh.
But if you're selling a microphone, right, it's only guys who are making podcasts. Right? I mean, it's a
Yep.
very niche clientele. I think everybody needs the value you provide. I think about the growth of AI, the growth of technology. I think it's the human value of saying, hey, we got to force that conversation about that disability plan, about that life insurance plan, about that. Well, that's the push that makes a difference. I want to hear about the two of you facing off in beer league basketball.
Well, we haven't faced off yet, right?
We've never played
the
against-
same.
Whoa.
We've been on the
Wait,
same
Wait,
team,
how many
right?
teams are in this? Because like in my ice hockey beer leagues, like we get like maybe 4 to 6 teams in the division. How many teams you got?
Yeah, I'd say around like 6 to 8 have been in
Okay.
the division.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not playing together anymore, but the last 3 or 4 years, I think we've won 3 or 4 championships.
Yeah.
throughout
Who's
the
we? Wait,
years.
we is
Drew, myself, and some of the other Verona.
Yeah, I joined the
guys.
Verona school. I'm like an honorary. I got
Okay.
the honorary Verona stamp now, so I feel like I grew up there. But Bobby's always the first guy I call. I moved to the city, so I'm living in the city now, and he's the first guy I call if we need a sub in the city. So he's come and played with us a couple times, which has been a lot of fun. But I mean, the competition's really
It's good.
It's good.
Yeah, we're playing
is that
against
why you
all.
tell Hunter that you're a sub on that team, even though you're probably a real player?
Yeah, it's how we get Bobby out of the. It's how we get.
Yeah,
we
I'll
get
come
Bobby some
ride the
cover.
bench. Yeah,
No, but
that's
it's
good comp though. It's like D1, D2, D3 guys. Like it's all.
Yeah, I'm every time I play, there's another. The younger, I turned 30 on Sunday.
All right, there we go.
So
Benchmark.
yeah, so you start playing against guys that are right out of college. I thought I was like at the top of my game, and I'm the next day you wake
You're
up.
also feeling it. Like
Yeah.
I got a game tonight. I had a game last week, and the next 2 days I'm like,
Yeah, it's not as everyone said that, and I always used to be like, oh, these people
are soft. Yeah, like,
yeah, they don't know what they're talking about, and suddenly now I'm like, I can't play tonight. I'm resting my body. It's a crazy thing, but no, but Bob's. I mean, I love playing on the same team as him. That's why
great,
That's why when I have a theory about life is I know exactly how someone is by the way they play basketball, and that's why I'm here because I love playing with Bob. He's he's a team guy, and obviously if he's affiliated with and I've done work with you guys and met with you guys, and it's the cream of the crop, and so that's who you want on your team is someone that cares about the success of the team, versus maximizing, because money is, it's always going to come and go, but you want to be affiliated with good people that do things the right way.
Yeah,
So.
I mean that's the core value, right?
Yeah.
You're on your client's team. We call it Power Forward Group because we take that sports level and we say, hey, we're going to be the Power Forward Group on your team, right? We're going to 2 advisors to every client. We want to have a team approach, but we want the client to be part of that team too, right? You want it to be collaborative. I think that makes all the difference. You're a point guard, right? So you hit those, you get Bobby with those dimes, right?
My job is to make sure that Bobby leaves happy after a game after passing him the ball. So and then if I can shoot a 3 every now and again, it makes me happy too. So
he's a sharpshooter. True.
Yeah, listen, it's.
Who are you picking first, Bobby or his brother?
Alex is good, but
it's tough.
Yeah, Bobby's got the.
Alex he's very
Alex
good.
Is a good player, and the funny thing, by the way, is that Alex, Bobby's brother, played with my brother Alex growing up on an AAU team.
Oh, that's right. I did forget about that.
So I've known I've known Alex since he was back in middle school and high school. So it's a small world. It's but it's basketball brings people together. It's a fun team sport. I may have to pick up pickleball soon because I need a different outlet rather than keep. But
Hunter wants me to stop playing altogether. The last
playing basketball?
The last 3 years, she's been screaming at me.
She's not going to be happy if you give it up.
Well, it's something like I play every Saturday morning, 7:15 on the Upper East Side. I look forward to it. I'm getting out of bed, popping out at 6. Like it's fun. Like it's fun. And that's like it's another thing I talk to. Not to be corny and try to tie this back into the corporate attorney lifestyle, but I have a ton of friends that you need an outlet because it's a high stress, high strung. You need something to go home. Like my girlfriend's an attorney; she works at a firm, and it's like finding a hobby outside that hanging out with friends is great, but something that you can do to get like that release of like, hey, I know I'm going to do this. I'm really excited to do this. That's hugely important for mental health. And people talk about mental health a lot. It's true. Sometimes it's a corny, discussion. Oh, you talk about mental health, but like it's not easy to do what corporate attorneys do, what law students do. It is easy to get wrapped up in that whole string. So I think it's super important. I've never talked about it on a pod. I've never, really done too many podcasts, but it really is.
Gonna get you in here.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like I'm a natural behind the knob.
You are. Jared, you've been incredible today. This has
been
been awesome.
Fun. Yeah, no, this has been. You guys do a great job. I've seen your podcast before, and it's bringing in people that give different perspectives is obviously a really important thing, and it's it's fun to be included as one of the guests. So I really appreciate it.
So Drew, you want to share your contact info so anybody can reach out to you?
Yeah. My email address is jacobs@jacobscounsel.com. My website is www.jacobscounsel.com.
Super simple. If you can't spell that,
we'll make sure to put it in the show
Yeah,
notes.
we'll put it in the show. But if you can't spell
really-
that, probably shouldn't be a client.
I was thinking about trying to spell it on the mic, but I decided that was going to.
I saw you. I saw you
You
thinking
saw
about
me
it.
like I was trying to decide whether or not that was smart, and then I was like, no, you guys will be able to find it.
Jay is
online,
and
but-
jackass, and then let's continue on from there.
And even if you have, for me, it's like, even if you have questions, general questions, I'm always happy to have the conversation because I feel like attorneys, sometimes people get a little nervous dealing with them, right? That's not really the way that I want to run a practice or build a business as someone that's like, oh, you need to schedule it with them. Just give me a call, shoot me an email. I'll be able to give information and really help from there. So.
Exactly what we're going to do the second this door closes. Bobby's got a bunch of questions about his estate plan, right? Free.
Free, exactly.
I just picked up one, so there we go. It was successful. So no, but I really appreciate you guys having me on. This was a lot of fun, and hope to be invited back.
Yeah, can't wait to have you
Absolutely,
back.
Joe.
Looking
Yep.
forward, and
Awesome.
All right.
that's a wrap, guys.
All right. Talk to you later, guys.